16th of March at 12:45 p.m. here in Berlin, Germany. Welcome once again to our cosmic journey. I don't know, we do something with our eyes. Casting our chart in the startup universe. Designer Jake here with engineer Trey as always. Hello, Trey.
Hello, Jake.
You might notice, you might not see this on camera right now, but we are incredibly wet because the weather had said that it was going to be a nice day. There's a dog there.
No, you can't tell how wet he is.
You can't tell how wet he is, but he's incredibly wet as well.
Yes.
It was supposed to be a nice day. And we started going outside to do our nice day stuff. And it just started raining. And we're like, oh, this will pass because they said it was going to be a nice day. And then it didn't pass. And then it got wetter and wetter.
Yeah.
And
although, there is something to be said about the rain as I think we have high expectations of good day equals sunny and no clouds. And the rain can be a nice day.
I don't want to say it's a bad day. It's just, it was an unexpected day. And so we did not do any rain abatement. We certainly made sure the dog was dried off, but I'm not dry. And I'm
not dry either. And actually, the reason I'm not wearing my very beautiful fancy hat is because it is also not dry, and it is drying on the drying rack.
On the rack right now. Yes. So you can see
in the process of becoming dry.
You can see Trey's head. That's special for the viewer. The viewer loves that.
Yes. Yeah, look how shiny it is.
It is shiny. Well, this podcast is already boring enough. How about we just go?
Look at this! Look at this rendering. It's very. There's great caustics.
Here, let me get you on solo for this one. Trey solo with name. There we go. Can we please see your rendered head? Oh yeah, no, the rendering.
Yeah.
The rendering on your head does
very
not
nice.
look. Yeah, doesn't look natural today. Today's episode is your chart seems very pointed right now. It is.
Wait, isn't that the one? Didn't we already do that one?
No.
Or is this one? We've just been kicking this one down the road since forever.
We've been okay. So Trey makes an excellent point. We did not do this episode because we had the intention of getting points on a chart well ahead of this. Probably I want to say 5 episodes ago, because I actually did the art for this episode.
Yeah, way back when.
Weeks ago. And it took some time due to our work circumstances, our personal circumstances to get us to this point. But we're here. We're at this point now. And we can talk about
literally at this point.
Literally at this point. Very good. Love that. And now we can actually start talking about looking at the chart and getting points on the chart, which is very exciting.
Yeah. I think we showed it. We showed it last episode. Labels were all over the place, and I'd just thrown some stuff in there, and it was we were both very crispy and cracked out because we were at a funeral, and it was very intense anyway. And then also we were jet lagged, and it was a lot. And I think we're only now starting to unwind. The spring is loosening.
So there's still some tension in the spring, you'll notice in our presentation today. And to that point, I feel like we got an episode banged out in 20 minutes. I think it's going to be longer today, but you know what? We'll see what happens. Let's start then with the check-in question, Mr. Henry.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the check-in question today is, what label were you given when you were younger, let's say grade school kind of age, by others that was meant to shame you, but in fact is a sort of core piece of your personality of which you're very proud of? So what labels did somebody give you that you're actually proud of, but they meant to shame you with?
The label. Okay. So the two things come to mind. One of them is not a shaming thing at all. One of them is literally me having some I have a lot of last name issues. I have a lot of trauma around my last name because with Zukowski as your last name, what ends up happening is you're the last picked for everything. And the one thing I had was pride in my, being a Z because it's such a unique letter.
Not just a Z, but a ZU.
A ZU. Zoo.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's such a unique way. It's a unique letter, right? And somebody I was on a volleyball team, by the way, and somebody that did not have a first name nor a last name that had Z in it actually had their nickname be Z, Z-E-E. And I was like, but that's my letter. I was like, if I'm going to have the trauma, do not take this from me. You know, like I get no benefit from it whatsoever. And by the way, it wasn't that big of a trauma because I was such a scheming kid that when we would be like, oh, you have to line up alphabetically, we're going to do book reports or we're going to do whatever. And I'm like, okay, great. I can stall because I'm at the end. And they're like, oh, we're going to go get ice cream because you had a special day. And I'd be like, we never go Z to A. And everyone's like, ah. So yeah, I was very good at scheming these things. But the nickname that I think that I have drawn that I took on as a place of shame that I've now taken on to a place of power, there was this idea. It wasn't like a nickname that super stuck with me, but it was this messiness, like messy. I don't even know if this is a thing, like messy Marvin. Is that a thing? Because I remember this being said like, oh, you're a messy Marvin.
I think you always, especially with like little kids, you always like combine some adjective with like some person's name that alliterates.
And
like,
it has to alliterate because
exactly.
It's not justice if it doesn't alliterate. And so I had this, I remember my second grade teacher, Miss Mullen Teofilo, being very clear about like how messy I was and how messy Marvin, and she would publicly dump my desk in front of the other students. And it was kind
oh
of
my
like
God, what?
Oh yeah. We don't talk about people on this podcast, but she is horrible. She's a horrible person.
She would dump your desk out because it wasn't clean. Mm-hmm. Oh, what
in front
a
of the other students
teacher.
and make me clean it up in front of the other students.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Not the way in which we should educate our children. And I did not take well to that, honestly, at all. But because of my personality, it's not that I am. Here's what I'll say. I violently and vehemently went against the messy Marvin-ness. And now in lots of respects, or almost all respects, I am hyper organized, probably too organized, because I like took that on and was like, no, I'm never going to feel that shame again. I'm going to do this thing. However, there is a certain amount of like messiness that I have embraced about like the way in which the world works, or the way in which like where people try to put structure upon things that don't want structure. I actually allow the messy Marvin-ness to like take hold and be like, it's okay. It's going to be a mess. It's absolutely fine. And I try to help other people that have problems with this type of messiness to embrace the messy Marvin-ness. So I guess that's the best way that I could say that I've kind of taken full circle, 180 to 360, the messy Marvin-ness into a place of power, because I actually kind of like that the universe is a mess. It's
the leftovers. We've talked about that in the past, like how you can never create a time system which is perfect because time is a mess.
And once you kind of embrace the messiness of yourself, of the universe, both of those things combined, it's a very liberating thing, because you're like, there's no end to this that's going to be clean, and that's okay, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. I like that. I especially like that because it's both. You both made a strength out of your reaction to, this leveling of you being messy.
Right.
So then you reacted to that and became like super, super ultra tidy in some ways. But then, and so that's a strength, but then also eventually learned to embrace the messiness. And so that's also a strength. That's a win-win.
It's a win-win. Everyone benefits from that one. What about you? What were your nicknames of choice against?
Yeah, when I was thinking about this before, I was there was a few options, but I think the one that I have to go with is nerd, because I'm older, as the viewer knows, so when I was in sort of like grade school and kind of like maybe heading into middle school, we're talking like mid-late 80s. The term, this is like kind of the heyday of the term nerd as being like really a bad thing. And it was, leveled against me and some of my friends because, we all wore glasses, we ran bulletin board systems off of computers, and we played Dungeons and Dragons. So,
how dare you? These are crimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
real crimes. And there was like a really othering with, labeling somebody as a nerd, because then it was the whole idea behind that was that you were sort of in this outside like group that wasn't cool.
Yeah, it
Um,
was definitely a society castigation. It was
yeah,
you
yeah,
were not
exactly. There was like
you
a
were not
caste
part of
system, and the
normal
nerds
society.
were, yeah, the nerds were close to the bottom, not the total bottom, but nerds were close to the bottom.
Who
Um,
was more bottom? Who is more bottom than you? Weird way to phrase that
nobody.
question, but just go with it.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually.
What about band
Let's
nerds? Were there flavors of nerds that were below? Because I was definitely in the band nerd camp, but it was not nerdy. It was just kind of like weird.
I think the band kids were actually a little bit above like the nerds,
Mm.
because they did do like the football games and stuff like that, so they were at least part of that group. Like our group of nerds were like completely anti-jock. Like for our group, like jock was like the worst, right? Like that was like, of course, labels.
Jock was the
But
worst.
anyway, but yeah, but being called a nerd, then like of course later on, like now I like really love it and embrace it, right? Like that is something that I think that and I think probably some of the people that in a very mean-spirited way leveled this like nerd sort of label against me. I have taken my nerdiness and turned it into a very glorious career, and yeah, I think it's worked out really well, and I really embrace that
Yeah.
about myself.
Honestly, standard is boring. So, good on you.
Yeah, but I also think that jock could be something that you could really own as well.
A
And
jock is a career for sure. A very
yeah,
lucrative
yeah,
career if you can do it right. But very few people
yeah,
can actually get to jock the jock career all the way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So nerd. That's the one I'm going with.
Very good. Do you want to talk a little bit about like the cycle and how the chart is very pointed right now? Do you want to explain a little bit about what that means and everything?
Yeah, I mean the big delta between last time and this time is that we got the labels actually like in place. So I'm going to switch over to showing that um, showing the app.
Yeah,
So
we can see it.
this is, of course, everybody's already seen this. Nothing changed here. But when we go to the chart, you can now see that not only are there labels, but they are, positioned correctly, and they are containing this the zodiacal positioning. The zodiac isn't being shown yet. We actually think that in depending upon the perspective, there are some cases where we probably won't show this and we'll just show the zodiac.
Right.
Um, which is much more how Urania works and a bunch of other software works. But the cool thing about this is that even with nothing else here, and we're just showing sort of the two luminaries and the five visible planets. We're also showing the north node, but you can't see the MCIC, but you can see the ACDC because it's actually being positioned that way. And so while they're not being actually marked out, you can kind of sort of visualize it. We're looking at whole sign houses here. And this
for
is actually
for the viewer, because some viewers might not be familiar with astrology, because I know at least one of them is not that familiar. AC/DC would be ascendant descendant. MCIC would be the midheaven and the enum cochleae, which is, we don't
Coeli.
usually use that word, but like those are
Yeah.
the kind of horizon lines versus the kind of midpoint of the heavens.
Culmination point.
The
Yeah, the
culmination
culmination
point.
point in the heavens
Exactly.
versus the culmination point below.
Exactly.
And yeah, so they are here. They're just not being rendered at the moment. But at least you could kind of like, if you imagine that the horizon is a completely horizontal line moving through this chart, then you can kind of visualize it. And of course, you can also verify that here from, the ascendant is 25 degrees Virgo. And so if we look here, we can obviously see that this in the whole sign house system, this first house is
pretty
Virgo,
close.
which is Vic's first house.
Yeah.
And then, 25 is going to be like right in here.
Yeah.
So so this is actually, you could actually interpret this chart. There's a lot that's being shown on this chart right now that you could do a lot of astrological interpretation in.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Still, obviously, lots of work to go here, but
it's looking pretty solid actually, and we have the labels. We have the labels kind of arcing in from the angle into. That's a very traditional way of doing that. We're thinking about other ways that we might want to do that, but like the math is kind of hard, honestly, and like how to make the labels look a different way. I don't know. We're just playing around with it. Like we've said in previous episodes, a lot of what you do in this kind of work is like 80% prototyping and 20% making real. And so we're still in the kind of prototyping phase and all of this stuff. And we're just playing around with it. But like Trey said, we're getting to a point now where we can actually use the software for these things, kind of get a feel for these things and see what works and what doesn't work, at least for us, and then start testing it with other people maybe here in the near future.
Yeah, exactly. And also you can't tell this here, but this is a single ring. Obviously, we're showing just one date time, and those details are not here yet either. But all of the code that I've written here is taking into account that you could have n number of rings.
Oh, yeah.
And so, part of the complexity here and why a bit of why things are a little bit slow here is because we need to support this scenario where we have n number of rings. So we could have 2 or 3 or 4.
Or more.
So yeah, that adds an extra layer of complexity to this whole process. But it's cool. It's exciting. We're starting to get to the point where, we could actually start using Cosmic, which is amazing.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
Getting there soon enough. And also,
okay. I'm switching back over to my regular.
Hey, you don't have to say a word. I know what you're doing. It's all good. I don't know.
I don't want to get yelled at for the infinite mirror.
I don't know who would yell at you. I don't know who that would be. But yeah, no. Also, this idea of like having multiple rings, and then I've been doing a lot of studying on subsidiary charts or calculated charts. What we would call calculated rings, because a chart is multiple rings. So I've been thinking a lot about that and been deconstructing that. I don't need to show that stuff right now, but that's a lot of what I've been deconstructing, because I think I made some bad choices in the design that I'm needing to probably fix. But anyways, that's just something. That's something for me to work on. That's for me.
Yeah. There was something else that I wanted to. It's not in the agenda, but there was something else that I wanted to bring. Is there actually anything else in the agenda that we needed to talk about?
As it turns out, a whole lot of 0. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one thing that I don't think we've talked about up to this point, because it's really related to sort of like our career paths and like how Cosmic fits into, sort of where we're at generally with our life path and career path. And both of us, prior to doing Cosmic, had really gone down the management route in our careers. This often is the case when you are good at what you do and you really enjoy what you do and you get good at it over many years. Then often what ends up happening, particularly in the corporate community and sort of the business community, is that you will be really encouraged to take a leadership role.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is the expectation, is that you go into leadership because you know how to do this stuff and you can help others to do it. And so that's the best way to, in some context, to scale your skills and experiences, right? Is to take a leadership role. But there's pros and cons to this. And what ends up happening is that you get further and further away from the doing of your craft. And so, Jake at HelloFresh wasn't doing design. Jake at HelloFresh was managing teams and, creating the infrastructure for design within HelloFresh.
Correct.
Most of the stuff that I was doing before this, for client work and other things, I wasn't writing a lot of code, very, very little, in fact, and really focusing on, how you build out teams, how you hire well, how you, mentor junior developers and turn them into good developers over time, and all of this kind of stuff. And so there's this transition that has to happen of going from leadership role and those skills, which is a very different skill set, to getting back to like, this is the craft of what I do. And it's wonderful. It's joyous because you get to you remember why you were doing this in the first place.
Yeah,
Nobody
exactly.
starts out doing one of these. Like nobody starts out doing design or like product design or software engineering or anything like that because you want to go into management. Like that's not what anybody wants to do.
That wasn't my motivation. Absolutely
Yeah.
correct.
And so one of the great joys I think of, certainly for me, like doing like Urania and Georatio and Mosaic and all of these projects was being able to stay in the craft. And then, and now with Cosmic, like really deep diving into the craft side of things.
Yeah.
Like I spend most of my time software engineering. I'm listening to like podcasts about, how we best use our platform and what tooling we're going to use for like all kinds of different stuff. It's very, it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. And anyway, so what are your thoughts on returning to the craft?
I 100% agree with you. It's been really nice. Sorry, my volumes are going all over the place. Give me 1 second here.
Why are you yelling?
I'm not. Okay. The problem I have right now is that our friend Mac OS keeps turning down my input volume. What's going to happen is that my volume is going to go crazy during this episode. And that's okay. And that's fine. And so what I've had to do is try to equalize your volume while you were talking.
Okay.
The whole remixing thing on this thing is a mess right now. Anyways.
Okay. Well, we'll fix it.
It's fine. We're not going to fix it in post. It's going to sound like crap. That's fine.
Yeah.
Not what I care about right now. What I care about is going back to my craft, getting excited about like going back to the doing of these things. And Trey's absolutely right. Like the reason I went to design is because I had a point of view on like, I'm very good with systems thinking, and I have a very strong point of view on like what makes things easy and intuitive and what makes things hard to use. And I have a very low threshold for poorly designed experiences of any type. And I think I used to say, like when I was a more junior designer, that like a healthy intolerance for bad things is like one of the critical aspects of being a good designer. I don't know if you necessarily need to have that level of criticality, but I have it, and I missed it because the experiences I was designing for, like Trey said, were really around like management experiences and like how do you get a group of designers engaged in a vision, and how do you get them all kind of focused on the same mission, and how do you get them to have autonomy and responsibility in these things. And those are designed experiences, but like it's kind of people designed experiences, and I would rather at this point go back to product design experiences, and I missed it. So Trey's absolutely right. Agreed on all that stuff.
Yeah. So for anybody who's watching this too, like take a step back and particularly if you're at like mid or late career, and what is the delta between the reason that you got into what you do and where you're at with it now? And is that something that you want to change or you want to adjust? Because even if you are, like I was working on Urania and Georatio while I was doing consulting work, mostly on the management side of things. And so I think there's a lot of things that you can do with like side projects and stuff like that to stay in the craft and stay in the joy of creating, of being a creator in whatever the thing is that you do. So
love it.
Yeah.
Would you like to wish the viewer anything for a happy Saturday?
I
or
just
do you want me to
realized
do it?
I realized that we always do these on Saturdays, which is literally Saturn's Day.
Saturn's Day. So this is why I have to do it, because it's Saturn's Day.
Yeah, you did.
Happy Saturday, everyone, or whatever day you watch this. Be well.
Clean your room.
Clean your room.
Nobody likes a messy room. You know what? Look behind Jake. Look behind Jake. There. Look at
Stop
all
being
that
a messy
dog
Marvin.
detritus back there.
Do not be a messy Marvin. You might have a house, you might have an apartment, but you have one room that you really need to clean. And go in there and clean that room. And while you're doing it, listen to this podcast again. Oh my gosh, I got all things kept popping up here. Be well. I hope that things don't crash. Take care. We love you. Have a beautiful Saturday or whatever day you watch this. Bye.
Bye.